Hi.
Hi, there you go. Well, we've got you back. Let's get you in vision. Fantastic stuff. Well, welcome back. I'm joined yet again today by Errol Musk, the father of Elon and several other children. You've got seven altogether, haven't you?
Yes.
Very good. Who's
Yes.
your favorite?
Oh no, they're not favorites.
That's
I wouldn't
the
risk that.
wise answer for any father. You can never have a favorite. It's got to be good. We were talking about Donald Trump and the bromance, as I called it, between Donald and Elon. Now, the latest claim that Donald says is that if he's elected president, which seems likely, or I think odds on according to the statistics, then what he will do is he will basically form a colony on Mars before the end of that presidential term, which he'll do with Elon. What's your take on all of that?
Well, that's what he's been spending billions on for years now. And you know, as with any of his the early endeavors, a person is inclined to say to him, give it up, or perhaps you shouldn't be doing this, or why are you bothering. But if you'd said that to him about Tesla, there wouldn't have been a Tesla. If you said that to him about SpaceX, there wouldn't have been a SpaceX, and so on and so forth. So no, his dream his vision is to actually have people on Mars, and I mean he's put his money where his mouth is all the way along. So you have to give him the credit that he's going to do what he can. He started Starlink, as a matter of fact, which is probably going to be the biggest IPO in history, because it's made up of thousands of satellites. I don't know if you know that 85% of all satellites ever launched since 1960 have been launched by Elon.
Right.
85% of all
Extraordinary,
satellites
extraordinary
have been
statistic.
launched by Elon. So, I mean, it's ridiculous. But at any rate, he's set this thing up. He had this idea in 2016 that if he sets up all these satellites, and then he had the idea of 60,000 satellites. But with technology improving, he's managed to do the whole thing with 7,000 satellites. So there are now 7,000 satellites up there, which they can replace, or whatever necessary, all the time, and they work with each other as like one big system. And this is good. His idea was this would provide Wi-Fi around the whole world, which is everybody sort of said, well, give me a break. That's never going to happen. But it has happened. It is happening. And it is now the biggest threat to all the fiber optic people and the cables under the sea people and all those things that's ever existed, because they just don't know what to do, because this is going to take over. It's going to be a very much better Wi-Fi. It is already a much better Wi-Fi. It's much faster, and it's going to be very inexpensive. And next year, as Elon told me a few months ago, it will be from your cell phone.
Right.
So it doesn't matter where you are, it'll be from your cell phone. So, it's logical anyway. But the thing is that he did that with the idea that if he does that, he will generate. His purpose for Starlink was that he could generate, at the time, he said one day he thinks he could make $80 billion a year out of a Wi-Fi system like Starlink. And that was the reason he started Starlink, that it would provide the capital to put people on Mars, to provide the capital to build the system that would send people to Mars. So there's a kind of method in his madness. And so even I, at this point in time, I'm inclined to say to him, shouldn't you sort of just be happy with what you've achieved or something like that? I wouldn't do that. I would never say that. But you know, but because a launch of a Starship was like $2 billion. $2
Right.
billion. I mean, you that's a lot of money. And all right, it goes into the system, it goes to all the workers, it goes to all the employees. It's a circulatory $2 billion. It goes back into the system. It's wonderful. And it's in the financial net, or fiscal net, as they say. So there's nothing wrong with it. But anyway, yeah, no, so that's what he's planning to do. And so, you know, in a sort of tepid way, I say, yeah, okay, we'll try it, see what we can do. Let's see how we go.
But
So I would,
it is interesting, Errol, because in the same breath as he said, look, this is what we're planning with Donald Trump, he does say if Kamala Harris gets elected, then that would basically scupper the whole project. Why is that?
yes. Well, they bring in regulations, and they bring in a kind of approach to life that is somewhat foreign to us. It's the other kind of life. In other words, people who don't see the, or don't, what's the right word? They don't see the forest for the trees, or whatever it is. They only see the bad things, or they don't want to see beyond themselves. They don't want to think ahead. I don't know what those kind of people are, but if they come in, they will find a reason to stop it. And at the same time, of course, they feather their own nests to make sure that they are very well off in the process. They're bad people, and
Well,
that's
she
why.
was. I mean, Kamala Harris was vice president while she's there, chaired the National Space Council and advocated for space exploration. She signed 37 countries to the Artemis Accord promoting peaceful space use. And she has been a strong supporter of space program. Do you think it's just really the regulation side which is going to be the problem?
Well, I'm glad to hear that about her. The Artemis program was a waste of money to start with. It never really achieved anything. It was lost from the start. The Boeing capsule that's up on the space station, or has been up on the space station recently, is a failure. Elon has to rescue those two in February, the two astronauts. Yeah, no. What we have here is two different types of human being, and we have to sort of realize that although they may look in some ways similar, there are different species. There's a different species. The species thinks differently, and it works differently, and so we have to look at it that there's some kind of species difference. So for people like myself, I've always been fortunate. I've always been head of my class. I've always been the head of things. I've always been very fortunate. As it happens, my son is the wealthiest in the world, so-called. So I could actually say I've been fortunate.
Yeah.
And in my mindset is that I would take Donald Trump in an instant. I would never even remotely think of employing someone like Kamala Harris in a business of mine. I wouldn't think of it for a moment, not even for a second. Yeah. I wouldn't be even interested in meeting her. Whereas I'd swim the Atlantic if I have actually had the opportunity of saying hello to Donald Trump.
But how was it? When did that happen?
Oh, listen. Anyway, yeah, I know it was years ago, but the thing is, it was just he didn't know who I was, so it's no point in. I just greeted him, you know what I mean? But so I followed his career, you see, because I was in the same sort of career in this country as he is, and that is developing rundown areas.
Yes.
And he developed the west side of Manhattan from a rundown railway siding into the most beautiful buildings some of the most beautiful the world has ever seen, and certainly in America. And for that, he was given nothing but a hard time by the Democrats. They just did everything they could to make it hard for him to do that. And so you have to come to the conclusion that there are two different kinds of people. There are those who seem to feather their own nests and want to prevent anyone else from getting ahead to do anything on the grounds that for some reason they think they shouldn't be doing it. I don't know why. And then you've got the other kind of people who just only see the stars. They don't see anything but going up and trying to do the best they can. So there are these two different kinds of people.
Right.
And the two different kinds of people that are going to vote in this American election are going to be those two different kinds of people. The one who is as I've noticed, a Democratic woman will come on television or on TikTok or on Fox or something, and you'll see she's a dowdy woman with glasses, could probably look much nicer, but looks awful. And that's an American Democrat female. And then along comes the presenter on Fox, and it's a blonde beauty, and you wonder what on earth she's doing presenting on TV. That's right. That's your other species. That's your other one. And so fortunately, in my case, I'm with the blonde beauty type and not with the dowdy types. And I think we've all seen this, Andrew, at university, and I'm sure you have. I have. When I was at university, there was always that sort of crummy, that always complaining crowd. They all looked dowdy and they were always moaning about everything, And then you had the other crowd who were always making a success of everything. And the two just could never, ever mix. And that's what you've got in the world today.
Yeah.
I look at this, as if I go on, this Keir Starmer, he doesn't look like a prime minister to me. I don't think he's a bad bloke. He doesn't look like a prime minister to me. He looks like a plodder. He looks like Mr. Plod from the Noddy. No, I mean, that's an insult to Mr. Plod. So, I don't know. I mean, even Boris, every time I saw him, I thought, God, if I could get hold of this bloke, I'd comb his hair. But he had something about him, that made you watch him. He was all right.
Well, he always started off. I mean, what I loved about it, he sort of started off as the Carlsberg of politicians, as I would call him, where basically he could reach part of the electorate that other politicians couldn't reach. He ended up as this sort of Marmite character, where basically you either love him or hate him. But we need personalities in the world, and Elon is certainly a personality, as indeed is Trump. But he does have his run-ins. Everybody has his run-ins, and one of the things he hasn't done is that they're investigating at the moment about his takeover of Twitter and where he got his money from and so on and so forth. And he didn't show up.
Bad.
Yeah, he didn't show up for the SEC. They want to sanction him now. What's your take on that?
Do you blame him? I mean, he put together an amount of money that is equivalent to the gross national product, if not more, of this country. And he bought this thing knowing that it's wildly overpriced.
Right.
And he bought this thing knowing that he shouldn't be bothered with this. He should go and live in Hawaii or some nice place. But he did this for the people of the world. You could say, quite honestly, you could say that he did that in the interests of humanity, to stop these bad people from allowing, for example, all sorts of porn and child trafficking programs, websites on Twitter to go ahead without any trouble. But anything that promoted the kind of people we like was stopped. And so he got rid of them. And having done that at such an enormous cost to himself, I mean, the interest on that money must be in the vicinity of $1 billion a year. At least, and now he has to go and justify that he did this with all these proper people who provided him with the loans or his own money. That I know he put in about $12 or $13 billion of his own money into it. He has to go and justify it to a bunch of losers, and who would love it to hear that he was struck by lightning on the way in or something, who go home at night and take it out on their children, no doubt, the type of people I'm talking about, their frustrations, and those are the kind of people he's up against.
It's really difficult. I mean, just to put it into perspective, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, independent agency of the U.S. federal government, created in the aftermath of the Wall Street crash of 1929. They're supposed to protect investors from misconduct, promote fairness and efficiency in the security markets, and facilitate capital formation. They're investigating his $44 billion acquisition, focusing on whether he followed the law in disclosing his stock purchases and if his statements were misleading. Do you think they were?
Well, it was originally a good thing, the SEC, but now it's become a political body, just like the FBI, just like the CIA. It doesn't have the interests of people in the United States at heart. It has some special interests at heart. So you can say that with impunity, because I could be sued for saying that, but that's fine, because I would win in court. If it was a decent court, I would win because I'm right. And so they are not doing what they are purported to be doing. They're trying to make life difficult for Elon. They're trying to make TwitX suffer and give more space to this hidden body that wants to put Kamala Harris in, a lady who looks as though she needs to be a little bit less on the drink or something, from what I saw recently. They want to put her in as president, and that's their plan, and he's in the way. Elon's in the way. He wants people to know what's going on. And that's ridiculous. So the SEC is simply waving a flag and saying, we are from the wrong side of the spectrum as far as you're concerned. We are going to bring you down, and we'll find a way. We'll find that you didn't phone so-and-so on such and such a day before 12 o'clock and so on and so forth. Therefore, there's a fine involved in that, and it's nonsense. Yeah. I don't think I can say much more, but let them try. Let them do it. Let them try.
I mean, it is interesting. That's why I go back to the sort of childhood
and Elon
resilience.
Says, I can't make your meeting. I've got to launch a rocket.
I know. Well, that's what I was going to say, because all around the world, it seems that everybody's having a pop at him with his several different companies, whether it's shutting down X, whether it's talking about the financial regulations, whether it's fights with residents about SpaceX and so on and so forth. How does Elon cope with all of those people?
Well, he's got a sort of autistic kind of personality. I suppose that might be the word, where things sort of bounce off him a bit. I mean, I remember I told a story about him getting sick over a bunch of business executives at a dinner table.
Yes.
Once I told you, and he was upset about it, but a few minutes after we left the dinner, he was talking to me about the dog that they had.
You should clarify the age that he was. You did tell me. Remind me of that story quickly.
He was 8 years old.
Yes, he was 8 years old. It wasn't recent. Yes.
I said to him after this, Jesus, why did you eat that stuff that they gave? He said, well, you told me I have to eat everything. I said, well, don't eat stuff you can't take, you can't eat. Anyway, he said, Dad, did you see they have a Great Dane? They have a Great Dane in that place. So we got to get a Great Dane. So he lets things bounce off him. As a little boy, when he was 7 or 8 in grade 2, the teachers, the principal of the school phoned me and said to me that would I come in and see him? And I thought, oh my, this has got to be, of course it's about Elon, So I thought, oh no, what has Elon done? And he had this habit as a small boy of telling anyone he met who queried anything he was doing, like if he used to read quite prolifically as a young boy. So if he was reading a thick book, that some adult would say to him, hey, little boy, are you really reading that book? And he would say to the adult, what, are you stupid or something? Of course I'm reading it, which didn't go down very well with a lot of adults. But at any rate, so I thought, oh my God, he's called the teacher stupid. So I went in to see the headmaster, and as it happened, there was a teacher sitting in the room with him, and there was a woman teacher, and she was wringing her hands. And cut a long story short, the headmaster said to me, look, we've come to the conclusion that Elon is retarded. So I said, well, I knew he wasn't retarded, you see. So I said, well, why? And they said, well, this woman wringing her hands, almost in tears, the teacher, she said, well, he doesn't listen to me in class. He looks out the window all the time. And I can't seem to attract his attention. No matter what I do, he keeps looking out and he doesn't even see me. He doesn't even see me, she said. And so I went to him and I walked up to his desk and his little desk, and I bumped him on the shoulder, and he turned around and sort of woke up and looked at me and said, the trees are turning green outside. It was spring, you see, so, or something like that. And she said he was looking at the trees instead of listening to me. And so consequently, they came to the conclusion he's retarded. So I saved that particular, but Elon was totally nonplussed by that. When I spoke to him about it, he said, oh, no, the teacher, this, that, now, he doesn't worry about it. So he doesn't take it to heart, you see. And going to him and say, they think you're retarded. No, I'm not retarded. He doesn't take it to heart. And actually,
it's interesting, Errol. I mean, you use that word, and that's a word that he repeated in a tweet, and again, he got into trouble about it. It's all about language and so on and so forth. But it's putting it in perspective. He was labeled with that word. Is that why you think he was using it in that context?
Possibly. I mean, in those days, people didn't mince words. I mean, they didn't say we think he's academically challenged. In those days, when Elon was in grade 2, they said he's retarded. We think he's retarded. And that was what the normal word was, I suppose. But I was able to save that thing by saying, maybe he doesn't. Oh, no. The headmaster said, maybe he doesn't hear properly. And I jumped on this and I said, I'm going to have his hearing tested. So that was the end of that. And we left and we had his hearing tested, nothing wrong with his hearing. And I actually moved him to another school, which was and after that there were no more problems. But no, Elon doesn't. He doesn't. You don't really reach him with an insult. You'd have to be particularly have some particular knowledge of weakness, of some kind of weakness that he might have. I can't think of anything. But so in that respect, Kimball, on the other hand, you could reduce to tears in a moment.
Oh dear! How do you reduce him to tears?
Oh, he's a very arty, emotional guy. So if you were to, I mean, when Kimball got married, he was in tears, at the altar.
Right.
It was very serious business, crying in tears at the altar. And Elon, of course, when he got married, of course, he just made sure all the famous names were there to have a big wedding.
How many times has Elon been married? How many times?
Elon's been married once, I think.
Okay.
Twice. No, he's been married twice. He's married to the first one, Justine, and then to Lula. He divorced her, then remarried her, and then since then he's never been married.
Right.
And Kimmel's been married twice. So
okay.
yeah.
But he's had. And how many grandchildren do you now have? You've got it's quite a few with Elon.
I've got about 20 grandchildren.
20. Do you know all their names?
Yes, of course. Don't ask me to run them off, but I do know their names if I see them. And
right.
It is difficult because sometimes when I do see them, I suddenly have a blank, and then I, have to say, I just need the toilet quickly, and rush to the toilet and look on my phone.
You've got a little crib sheet, have you? You work on that sort of basis.
Look on my phone.
But Elon, I mean, he was with the artist Grimes, wasn't he? Then that's when I think it was Grimes who came up with all these sort of wonderful names for the children. Was that the main influence?
Her that came up with the names.
Yeah.
But my daughters tell me, my daughters spend a lot of time, my two daughters there, have spent a lot of time with Grimes, who we call Claire, as a matter of fact, and tell me that she's a wonderful girl, nothing like her stage persona.
Right.
In fact, a very down-to-earth, very wonderful girl. And but I think she is actually a little bit on the odd side, because she wanted to put tattoos on the little boy when he was small, and Elon wouldn't have that on his head, in fact.
Oh, really?
And, well,
I think that's illegal. I think it's illegal, certainly in some countries.
So at the moment, Elon's got a situation where he has custody of him. She came up with the names, and Elon doesn't come up with funny names like that. And we like nice names, of course, but he has custody of Zex. We call him Zex now, which is not bad. It's like Xavier, short.
Yes.
Xavier, Zex, and XEX, and so he has custody of him. And at last time I took note of things, and she's trying to get him away from Elon, but Elon the courts have given him custody because of for the sake of the child, So let's not delve into that. But funny, the courts in America are still quite conservative family courts, and they are concerned about child's well-being, and so he has been able to get custody of.
How old is Zex at the moment?
Zex is 4. 4. He will be 4 shortly.
And Grimes wanted to put a tattoo on X.
Well, she wanted to tattoo his head under his hair when he was a baby, and Elon, as I understood it, I was explained to me by my daughters that he said no, he's not prepared to have that done. But you must understand, the art world is different. They are different, right. In my world, if you've got a tattoo, you're unlikely to get a job in my type of
absolutely.
field.
And you mentioned Japan before. In Japan, it's basically associated with the Yakuza and things like that. So this is why they don't have Japan tends not to have tattoos. But X at that age, I mean, in certain countries that would be illegal. What was the tattoo going to be of? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know that. Well, I think they're arty people, so they see things from an arty point of view. And again, it's like a different species, but it's a nice species, the arty people. So a lot of the things they do are not bad. You've made a comment previously about this picture behind me, and people thought
the Miro. I love it.
Yeah, I thought it was a nutcase. Now, a Miro, I mean, no one can even buy a Miro. You can probably buy a Belgrave Square apartment for less than a Miro, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, so, you
Well,
know,
the picture
so,
behind me, I knocked that up a bit early. You see, it's the
that's beautiful.
thank
Tower of
you.
Babel.
That's the one. That's the one. Well
Yeah.
spotted.
But
Yeah.
anyway, the thing is, so you've got the arty people, and you got to give them credit. I mean, without them, what life would be horrible
Yeah.
without them. But again, in my particular sphere, I could never, you know, my sphere doesn't allow people to even be employed if they've got "I love mom" on my arm or something like that, you
Right.
know, or whatever tattoo
Yeah.
they
Sort
might
of
think is
love,
nice,
hate, or whatever it is going to be on that
or you
sort of
know,
basis.
something like that. No, no, it
Yes.
doesn't work, and so unfortunately, it's a bit lower deck, you know. So tattoos are somewhat lower deck, and
Yeah.
you can't do it. But
Do
anyway,
any
in
of
the
do any
arty
of your
world,
children have tattoos?
no, not a single,
Elon
not
doesn't
a
have a
single one.
tattoo. Not a single one.
Nothing, nothing, nothing. No, Elon, no, 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 no. The body is temple. You know, Elon would tell you the body's a temple. So
Right.
he's a very religious guy. You know,
Okay.
I don't know if you know that. Oh, yes, very religious. So for him, the body is a temple. So he will remind you when you smoke or something that the body is a temple. Do you know that? You do
Oh,
know that.
good. Is that? Do you smoke? Are you a smoker?
Me, no, 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 no. But he will tell people
Right.
you do know the body's a temple. But
Okay.
half the time they don't know what he said, so it sort of goes over the head. You know.
Right.
But if somebody lights up, you might. I've heard him say, the body's a temple. You do know that, don't you? You know, and
Yeah.
I don't think they quite get it. But anyway, um, no tattoos and stuff like that. No, Elon wouldn't do that. Nobody in the family has done that. Simply because we aspire to positions that would not look quite would not doesn't work.
Sure.
And admittedly, it doesn't matter how you color it. You wouldn't want to see. You'd be very surprised if you saw, Keir Starmer roll up his sleeve and it said SSS,
I
SAS,
love Maggie Thatcher
Minerva,
or something. Yes.
or or Karl Marx was my best friend, or something like
Ah,
that.
there you go. Well, you wouldn't be that surprised.
It looked rather weird, because
Yeah.
it's just not allowed,
Well,
unfortunately.
it is interesting. You talk about around the world, and people have different attitudes. I mean, there's a big debate at the moment about whether you should legalize cannabis, for example. I mean, what's the family's attitude about drugs and cannabis and so on and so forth, and the rules and regulations in place?
Well, we're open-minded about that kind of thing because cannabis has been shown. Because in Colorado, we spent many years in Colorado, they have a lot of health balms and things that you buy that are cannabis inspired, which are quite good. And I was quite surprised. Cannabis balm put on a rash or something, and away goes the rash. I have some of that still from Colorado, which I bought in Colorado. And Colorado introduced cannabis shops about 10 years ago. So you could buy cannabis if you wanted it. And I think they're all in bankrupt because nobody wanted it when it was easy to get. And no, I don't think we have any specific. None of us smoke, so we're not really smokers, or not to say we're opposed to smokers. It depends on your generation. My dad was a chain smoker. My father, you can't help it. He came from the Second World War. It was his lifeline. So it depends what you've had to put up with, I suppose.
Sure. No, I mean the health benefits of cannabis and so on and so forth. I mean, people have spoken about that
Yes.
quite widely, and you have CBD, and it's very useful for certain conditions. What about other drugs? What's your attitude to other
But I
drugs?
can tell you something quite interesting. When my children were first at university in the United States, I was quite concerned about the drug stories.
Right.
So when all three of them were at university, that's Elon Kimball, and Tosca. Tosca, by the way, owns Passionflix, which is
Right.
like Netflix. Okay, very interesting subject. Anyway, an incredibly capable woman.
Oh, we'll
But at
get
any rate,
Tosca on as well. We should have
yes,
them on
she's
to talk about
absolutely
that.
marvelous
Absolutely.
and beautiful looking girl. But at any rate, where was I?
Drugs. We're talking about drugs
Yeah,
at university.
when they
Yes.
were when they went to university, I asked them about it. I was concerned because they were really like little boys when they left me. People have asked me when they were in South Africa. I received a question the other day. Did I try and prevent? Did they leave South Africa to avoid the military? In fact, I knew that there was going to be the military because I was a citizen force officer. I was in CO of a squadron, in fact. And I knew they were liable for that, for being called up. But they were little boys, so I never discussed it with them. They were little boys. They were teenagers who'd seen the world, but at heart they were still really boys. If you understand what I mean. Elon left South Africa when he was 17. I mean, he was still a boy. He was a little boy, and so when they got over to America, I asked them about the drugs. What's the story? Is anybody coming to you with drugs to buy? And I was concerned that they might think it's a good idea or something like that. And all three of them told me this, that no one in all the time that this was at least a year or so, 2 years into their studies, has ever offered them a drug in the whole time that they've ever been at university. Ever offered them a drug. All three of them told me that. Dad, we've never ever been offered a drug. No one has ever said to us, would you like the drug? And I looked into it and I discovered that 90% of the drug problem in America at the time was in the black community and not in so much in the white high-class university community, if you know what I mean. And so I was happy to hear that. And then I subsequently had dinner with a woman who was a professor at UCLA. And she said to me, she was a professor, very smart sort of woman, and at a dinner in America, and she said to me, I discussed the same thing with her. And she said to me, oddly enough, whether you want to believe it or not, she said, I've been teaching at UCLA for, I don't know what the length of time was, it was like 23 years or something. I have never had to take up myself in the war against drugs. I've never had to do anything about it, never had to involve myself in any kind of war against drugs as a professor at UCLA. How must I? I said, oh, okay, cool. So that's the B and the end of it. That's A and the B, or A and Z of it. Yes. And I can add, for example, that with all this transgender stuff that you read about now on the media or see on the media, I just spent 8 weeks in the United States, in Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Georgia. You see absolutely nothing whatsoever of transgenderism or weird things going on. It looks like the best of the best society you could ever have right now in America. So a lot of this is put on by the media.
Yeah, and that's what I always say about the media, because it's important. What I love about this, it's raw. We have exactly that sort of side. But for people who are watching this, and final thought, and then I'll let you get on until next time. For people watching this program who are suffering with addiction or suffering because of drugs in their own family, what's the final word of advice you would give them?
Well, I have the experience of I married a woman whose child was hooked. I didn't know anything about drugs at that time. Who was sort of addicted to heroin, and it took many years. And the use of some kind of drug that was invented in Germany after the war, methadone, to take this child off the drugs and rehabilitate that person. But it took a lot of time and a lot of patience, and the will of the person to get off it, and to achieve that. And so I have in fact been in the position myself where when that particular child was desperate for heroin, and I have gone and bought the heroin. I have gone into the heroin districts or the districts in the street in Cape Town at the time and bought the heroin from dealers on the street, that they take the heroin out of their mouths. They have it in little packets in their mouths. They take it out of their mouths and give it to you out of their mouths, and at a traffic light, for example, in the dark. And that's how you're able to get it. And I was able to, I did that because this child needed the heroin, but slowly the child was taken off the heroin, so that eventually totally off the heroin. And so the question becomes, how do they get onto heroin? And so obviously it's something that is presented to youngsters in communities that are not well policed. And it's a problem that is I suppose everywhere. I don't have a great answer to it. I believe Cape Town is a drug capital, has been a drug capital, And I know you can buy heroin. I can go right now and buy heroin in Cape Town. And so they come across the border with heroin in America. They fentanyl, I don't know anything about, and they actually kill people. People die with this fentanyl stuff. And so what we're dealing with here is a policing problem, a government problem, to try and put an end to this. And I think it's a war. I mean, it's a war against drugs. And unfortunately, youngsters are very are victims. They see this as a way out. I think a way out of unhappiness or some feeling of despair or something. Say, take this, you might feel better. I've never had anyone offer me a drug in my entire existence, so I wouldn't even know. But I have actually bought heroin for somebody to use, and I would say that at the time that this happened, I went to the police in South Africa, and I said to them, "I know who is selling heroin on the streets." They said to me that they're too busy to do anything about it. I said, "But you're not busy. There's a whole lot of you here, and I can take you right now to the place where I can buy heroin. I can point out the people that are selling heroin on the street." They said, "We're too busy." I said, "But you're not doing anything." These were not blacks. They were white people in Cape Town, white policemen. And then I realized there's something wrong. And so then I was given a number to phone, which was the liaison chief of the South African police force. And I phoned this person, and I was told that he is a very important commissioner of some kind, and he will phone me, and he will discuss it with me. So he phoned me in due course, caught me, and phoned. When I say caught me on the phone, and he spoke to me for about 30 minutes, telling me all the wonderful things the South African police are doing to prevent this type of thing. And I said, "Well, I don't think you're doing enough." Anyway, it wasn't 2 or 3 months later that this commissioner was arrested on 102 counts of drug dealing. He's presently serving 21 years in the South African prisons. If he's still there or hasn't been released without anybody knowing, his name is Arno Lamour. That's his name, Arno Lamour, Commissioner Arno Lamour. As far as I know, he's in prison. He was the same person who phoned me to tell me that they're doing everything they can. He was found guilty on 102 counts of drug dealing. So that's where the problem lies.
Yeah. And I think we keep having to look at that. Errol, it's been an absolute revelation, a delight to have you as always. You're coming on regularly. We'll keep unpacking those stories. You can guarantee that the Musk family is the single-handedly ensuring we get great news from around the world. But for now, Errol Musk, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Andrew.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. To come and buy heroin. And imagine you with me in your suit like that up. It would be so funny. You know what I mean?
We'll have to do that.
I think if the drug dealers saw you, they'd all run.
Good. That's a wise move. Take care, Errol.
I'm just saying that to do it, you have to put on a hoodie.
Okay.
A hoodie, so they wouldn't be able to see who you are, you see.
I look too respectable otherwise.
All right.
Take care. I'll see you next time.
Then.
Cheers.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.